I'm Michael Singer. I work at AT&T in cybersecurity, protecting the enterprise, and I also work on our FirstNet program. So you're going to hear from me and from John Markley, my colleague. John and I have been working together for years. I learned today that he has been in cybersecurity longer than I have. He has about 5 more years than I do. So John and I both picked stories, and we're going to share them with each other and with you. All right. Hey, John, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Michael?
Awesome. I have a story I wanted to share with you. Russia in the news. This one's about mobile devices being hacked. You know, you hear a lot about Russia and that there's a lot of people with cybersecurity skills that use them to get into stuff. And in this case, Android mobile phones. But what caught my eye is they said they had 1 million Android mobile phones that they had taken control of. And then just to add to I guess the sophistication of what they did, they kind of waited silently for users who use mobile banking. They did discover that they use mobile banking, and then they would try to ask the bank to transfer some money. I think on the average, it said about $140 to their account, and then they would they had controls on the device so that any messages that would have alerted the user, hey, somebody's trying to do something here and I didn't authorize this, they were able to just block all of that from the user's view on the mobile devices.
I think a lot of the challenge there, of course, is that these users, these million or however many, probably don't have legitimate banking apps to begin with. Somehow they got the wrong or, erroneous app onto that device.
It sounded like using fake apps was one of the ways they compromised the million devices. It looks like it's the right app you're thinking of when you go to the Play Store, but it's really a fake version that has a backdoor and allows remote control of the device.
I know a lot of the mobile operating systems, too, are starting to implement mechanisms where you can't take over the force screen, on the device, so that if something does pop up, like you're mentioning, like a warning message or whatever, you can't block that. All those messages, that app has that control of that front programmatically.
So I think just to me, this sounded like one of the biggest mobile incidents that I'd heard of. I know that to start with, people felt so much more comfortable using their mobile devices. People would even test, I'll go there on my mobile because it won't hurt my mobile, right? That was kind of the way people thought. But I think 1 million infected Android devices, it's pretty significant. I don't know if there's been a bigger one. Is there a bigger one that I didn't see or hear about?
Not that's gone public. Sometimes you never know, but nothing that I've heard of.
Any advice? Should we give people advice? Better be good advice. We better follow it ourselves.
Yeah, well, it's the advice we tell everybody, right? Not to, load only stuff from approved apps and stores. Don't root your device. Don't side load. Make sure permissions are accurate. If it asks for administrative access, tell it no. Those are the common things we tell users anymore. Just know what you're putting on the device.
Yeah, I think usually we would start by saying make sure your software is up to date. You've applied all the security patches. But even if you do that, if you download an app that's a fake version of the app you think you're downloading, you're still vulnerable because you downloaded the wrong app.
Yeah, well, but again, I think the key there is that a lot of these guys are going to not the approved Google Play Store. They're going to third-party app stores, and that's the biggest flaw that people start down that path is that they feel like they can get stuff for free, or they can get something they can't get on the approved app store, so they start going down that path of loading from third-party stores, and you just never know what you're going to get in those cases.
Yeah, we would call it side loading, right? And
that's one way, yeah.
And most of the time, you thought the user wanted to sideload, right? They were trying to get something that wasn't on the main store. But is it possible to where the user doesn't even realize what store it's coming from? They're just doing something, and then here comes the app?
But typically, you've had to click something, either go to the store, or you got a text pop up or something like that and say, okay, I'm going to click this link. You've had to do something to initiate.
We talk on ThreatTraq about how if users are willing to download apps from stores that may not be the official stores, third-party app stores, side-loading, whatever you want to call it, if they're willing to do that, they're definitely exposing themselves to a lot of risk. Be careful where you get your apps.
So Michael, in the news recently, there's been a story about BlackBerry. We haven't heard from BlackBerry in a while, so something from the blast in the past, right?
Yeah.
BlackBerry wants to get into the secure car field and actually have antivirus for cars, that are running, some kind of, programmatic, interface or whatever, just to connect those cars to the internet. And they think that there's a market for antivirus. We don't typically consider your car as a vector for hacking, though we've seen some stories, where people have taken over cars or done some other things. So that certainly, were instituted or, instigated by risky behavior in the first place. I think that the key element here, more than anything else, is we're getting into that Internet of Things, in that world where we have to consider so many things are connected, but we also have to treat them as, in a secure fashion. So there's the argument there is how did a car or whatever get infected with a virus in the first place, and then how do you keep it updated? And I know that that's always a good challenge from anyone's perspective. And I think as long as the consumer is doing things in a secure fashion, know who's connecting, I'm a little skeptical on really a big market need for antivirus on a car. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, it's interesting. You have a lot of other things protecting you when you're in a car, right? You have all these new cameras are sticking everywhere to tell you when you're in danger. It seems like you should be able to put some protection against cyber threats. I don't think there have been that many of them to date. I think it's not millions of signatures you'd be talking about. It's dozens of signatures. I think every AV provider out there has kind of shifted their thinking and their model to more behavior-based. Like, watch for something that just doesn't look right. When somebody takes over something, what are the things they do? And then that requesting extra permission or writing to something they shouldn't be changing configuration on. So that kind of advanced set of controls and spotting that and stopping those. That makes a lot of sense to me. The stuff I've read about where somebody was able to get into a vehicle's systems and turn off the brakes or go through the stereo and take control of the main computer, those seemed like, if you follow kind of the practices we would follow, in our standards and our policies, you want least privilege. You shouldn't let access go way across completely unrelated systems and components. And if somebody does get some rights as a user, they don't get all the rights, to be an admin and update anything they want throughout the whole system. So, I think some controls make sense. I don't know if it's a client, and I don't even know if the threat is going to be a file and it's going to be called a virus. So it's probably a little different way of thinking that is needed in this space.
Well, and you think about how's the vehicle or anything going to actually connect up to get this vector, right? Are you plugging something into the ODB slot? Are you connecting to a rogue Bluetooth? It seems like the vector is so challenging, and it's really the same thing. I'm going to upgrade. I'm going to upgrade the device, or the car. I have to go to the dealer to do that in the first place. If you're going to do it legitimately. There's very few cars that you can update without going to the dealer. So to me, it's almost like you do with cellular phones, right? As long as you're taking care of it the way you're supposed to, keep it updated, don't connect to rogue spots, don't plug weird things in it that you find on the street. I think that right now I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how you could get in anything malicious, in the first place.
It's hard to believe that automobiles would actually run a traditional antivirus software agent. But it's possible to put more protection around the vehicles, absolutely. And if this software agent could do that, I'm all for more protection of those vehicles. I don't want my vehicle getting hacked, especially while I'm driving. There is once again an attack that people are saying might be the Doomsday scenario. Eternal Rocks is the name given to a new worm that has been spotted. This one, I'll get your thoughts, John, and if you think it could be the Doomsday threat. It takes advantage of a vulnerability from March. It was the MSO 1710 vulnerability, server message block. And this is the one that there's already been some exploitation of this, and people were actively trying to get everything patched. This is also where Microsoft kind of did something unusual, and they even gave you a patch for XP systems that you might still have running, because there were still, maybe 7% of the systems out there were still running XP. So they stepped up to the plate and said, here's a patch, even though we haven't had patches in years for that particular type of Windows system. A worm that spreads without user interaction, because it's remote code execution if SMB is running. So an unpatched system could just become infected. This particular new worm, from what's been seen so far, doesn't have a kill switch like some of the earlier worms had, which kind of limited how much they spread and how many systems became infected across the world. So it does sound like it has a potential to do some disruption and to infect quite a few machines across the planet if people haven't applied that March patch on their systems. Anything I said scare you, make you want to run for shelter or get your supplies out, doomsday scenario?
Yeah, in the 20 plus years I've been working security, I'm like you, I keep hearing this is the end of of everything. I do think that it certainly speaks to the need to patch. I've also heard that most large corporations, large businesses, use best practices and block SMB both inbound and outbound from their perimeter. And so, from that perspective, you're preventing a lot of this type of attack from even being successful, just because you're blocking the port that needs to communicate on.
So from a defense in depth perspective, you shouldn't have machines that would be reachable with an SMB vulnerability from the internet. Then on the endpoint, if it's patched, you shouldn't be vulnerable to the exploits. Even though they try a few different exploits, sounds like 7 different exploits are used to try to get to that endpoint. And then we can rely on the endpoint protection type of controls if they can get a sample and write signatures, or maybe some of the more advanced next-gen endpoint protection would just see what that worm is doing and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to allow that, and stop it at installation.
Yeah, I would also say, not only inbound from the internet, but outbound to the internet from your devices. You really don't want to have, there should be no need to communicate, externally over those, we used to always call NetBIOS ports or SMB ports. There
was one unique attribute, I think, to this worm, in that it waited a day before it phoned home over the back door that had been installed. So that if you're watching the network for that type of activity, it's been on the system for a day before you would see those machines doing that and be able to go and take them offline and remediate them.
Yeah, I think you're also going to see, the other facet that, these are so much ransomware. I think the doxing type vectors where you're actually releasing private information or gathering, sensitive information, that's the type of thing that seems to be getting a little bit more success in getting, the ransom paid, but it's certainly, not, again, something that we want to, to laud out there, say that's a good thing to do, but it is, the challenge, when you have an infection or you have an attacker on your network or on your devices for long lengths of time without, like I said, a day even, might be enough to spread it pretty far.
Right. And you're thinking destructive when you think Doomsday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and once they're on there, they can do destructive things, right? If they have the back door. So.
I still remember back the old days, and when I did the Unix, Unix admin stuff. It's a little RM minus RF flash, and you just delete everything from the root directory on down on every device, which would probably succeed fairly quickly in shutting you down.
Right. A lot of times when the attackers take over a system, they want to use it to do something. And when you destroy it, you're not really going to be able to use it to do anything. So it depends on where they're coming from, what their motives are, who's behind the attack. So we don't know who wrote this worm, but maybe their goal isn't just to disrupt and destroy assets across the globe.
Hey, John, I heard we have a little quiz to take today.
Yes, you do, and we're going to stump the heck out of you. That's what I've decided today. Stump Michael and Manny.
Great.
The first question may be a little tricky, so we'll see how y'all do. As we know, a lot of our mobile operating system vendors are doing things to help protect the consumer, the end device, and that's the same certainly for Google on Android. what do you know about how Google is protecting your device, especially against malicious applications? I'm going to give you a list of product names or really processes, and you're going to tell me which ones are real, basically. Number one is Stinger. Number two is Verify App. Number three is SafetyNet. Number four is Play Protect. Number five is Bouncer. And number six is App Check.
Well, I would say Stinger was the name of a tool you could use to find viruses. Even if you didn't have the AV client running, you could use Stinger, and it was like a way to check your system real quick. So I'm going to eliminate Stinger from consideration. That leaves us with how many? Six more?
Five more.
Five more?
Well, that ruins my answer because I was just going to say all of the above because that's usually the answer to these. But
You can disagree with Michael. Maybe Michael's wrong.
How many of the remaining five are we supposed to focus on? Two or three or?
Well, let's do it this way. I'll give you, Michael. You're right. Stinger is not the correct answer.
Woohoo! On our way. On our way, man.
So let's walk through these. Verify App. What do y'all think? Verify App, real or not real?
Verify App. I mean, that sounds like it should be a good one, right? I mean, because it's simple.
Right. I'm just not sure that it's just like a process running, right, in memory. And I don't know how it could do that job. It's a pretty tough job to do if you're going to verify like the authenticity, like how is it signed? Maybe. Okay, I'm going to go with Manny on Verify App is real.
Good answer, because it is real.
All right.
It is real. So it is a process. It's one of the primary processes that check to make sure that the applications running on a device are clean. And it also, not only that, but it also makes sure that if you've installed a device, they'll kind of check it again to make sure that it's legitimate.
Great.
Gotcha.
2 for 2. We're looking good here.
The thing to think about, these are things that people a lot of times turn off, and this is what makes their devices susceptible to attack. So the next one is SafetyNet.
SafetyNet.
That sounds too vague to me. Like maybe it was a movie about hacking.
Right.
I would just call foul just because it sounds too big to me.
Yeah, SafetyNet seems a little too
all-encompassing.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are both wrong. SafetyNet is real. Actually, SafetyNet is a core part of Verify App.
Okay.
And then so number four, is Play Protect. This one's kind of a tricky one, and not everybody's going to know this one.
So the Play Store, and you're going to protect it.
I'm going to give you this one to you just because I think it's going to be too tough. Play Protect is a new name for Google has just recently renamed Verify App. It's in some ways, and it's called Play Protect.
Okay.
So that one's a little tough. So the last two are Bouncer and App Check. So I'm going to tell you right up front, one of these is real, one of these is not.
So we got what? Bouncer?
Bouncer and App Check.
And App Check.
We already verified the app, so I'm thinking Bouncer is real and App Check is not.
All right. I like your logic there.
Bouncer would be the one that kills the process if it doesn't look right?
Because I have nothing else to go on, I'm going to agree with your logic there that Bouncer is the real one there.
So right now I would say that I have succeeded at convincing Manny to go along with me. I might be wrong.
But every one of these, does Manny have no unique opinions of his own? No, and you guys are right. I mean, your logic's a little flawed. I'll have to let you know. Bouncer is the process that they run the app through to make sure that they try to prevent a bad app from actually being on the Play Store, and Bouncer is the name of that process that they use.
Excellent.
Yeah. So good job. And these are tough, but I think for professionals, especially as we get more into mobile and more things run on mobile operating systems, it's kind of nice to know these terms, and just to kick them around, and so when you hear them, you know what they might mean.
Right. Yeah.
So you guys ready for question number 2?
Oh man, that was just question 1.
Yeah, we're ready.
Question 2 is easy. You guys are gonna fly through this one. I'm telling you right up front. This one's easy. So I'm gonna give you a list of port numbers or port names, and you need to tell me either the port number associated with that name or a common name if I give you like a port number. And I know you guys are gonna know this, especially fans of this show. You're going to see Brian and those guys talk a lot of times about the Internet Weather Report. They mention these things sometimes interchangeably, and it's kind of nice to know, what that means in the background. So the first one, and Michael, I think you're probably going to get this. I'm putting you on the spot. SMB. What port numbers are SMB?
I always think of 445 as an SMB port, but I think there's more than that. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
445
I think
TCP?
that sounds right.
We're talking ourselves into 445 TCP.
Well, that's one of many. Let's put it that way. 135, 137, 139, and 445.
Okay.
445 is really what's new. If you go back to the old days of NetBIOS, NetBUI, you used to see some of those other ports, but 445 is probably the most prevalent one for legitimate traffic nowadays. Here's another one, TCP 23.
Sounds like a familiar one. Manny?
Sounds like a familiar one, right?
I think it's Telnet.
You're on the right track, I'll give you that.
I think the number one scan port is Telnet, and I think it's 23.
Manny, will you agree?
I'm absolutely going to agree.
Okay, well, you're right. It is Telnet. And that's a lot of times we'll see that, in the Internet Weather Report, you'll see either a 23 as a big number for scans or, and that is the Telnet port. That's the protocol we're talking about. All right, here's the next one, UDP 53.
Sounds like
DNS.
DNS, Domain Name Services.
That's exactly right. UDP, and a lot of times you'll see TCP 53 as well, but UDP for DNS is most prevalent. Here's the last one, and I'm going to use a different name for it. So this one is a little tricky. It's CWMP. So Charlie, Walter, Mary, Paul.
Got me on CWMP.
CWMP. Can we ask for what it stands for? Right?
Yeah. So it's also a lot of times we'll talk. You probably have seen them attacks against what they call TR-069 or remote management. It's the stuff that people are attacking Internet of Things with.
Okay.
And that is, and I just tell you, it's 7547. So if you look at the Internet Weather Reports from past ThreatTraq, you'll see high numbers of 7547, and that's that attacks against those remote management ports of routers and devices on that to do the remote management type attacks against them. And so it's a really important protocol, but a lot of people don't know it just because it's until the last few years hasn't really been well known in the industry.
Okay.
That's the quiz. I knew that one was going to be a little tricky, but I know that you guys you at least knew that, except for the last one, you knew that you knew what the protocols were that we're talking about. So that's really good.
There's another port associated with TR-069.
Yes, there's actually several.
Right.
7547 is the one that they seem to be doing a lot of scanning against.
Right.
Very good, guys. So the next time I'll have to find one a little bit harder, right?
Those were good.
Yeah. No, I think we didn't do so well on those. So.
It depends on the scale. We still got like 80%, right? What's a passing grade?
It's passing. You pass.
Now, I usually tell people if you get a 99% of your security stuff right, you still fail because they're in, right?
Right. That's true.
Yes, I don't take that many quizzes. I would like to have gotten 100%, but I think we did all right.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
John. It was great to be on ThreatTraq. As always, there's no lack of interesting things to talk about when it comes to cybersecurity. Always something new, always something interesting.